Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Megan Dora, and I'm a graduate student in the Behavior Analysis Master's Program here at UHCL. I'm the program coordinator and the transition specialist for Connecting to College, but I also work with the Connecting to College program at Lee College. Lorena Galvin is here with us today as well. She is also a graduate student in the Behavior Analysis Master's Program, and she serves as a transition specialist at Connecting to College as well. So Connecting to College aims to support university students who have a diagnosis of autism or other related needs. But Lorena will tell you more about that program later. So thank you all for being here today. So I'll start with an overview of today's presentation. First, we'll talk about what having autism means, or ASD. Then we'll talk about what college students with autism might be like, including their strengths and challenges, and what you might notice. Next, we'll talk about how you might be able to help and what to do about disruptive behavior or if someone makes you feel uncomfortable. We can take some time at the end for questions and discussion, and we'll also go over some additional resources. Please feel free to share examples or ask questions if you have any, but please don't share any information that would identify a particular person to protect their confidentiality. And today we ask that you save your questions until the end discussion portion. And just a quick note about my sources. There isn't much out there in terms of empirical evidence to support effective interventions for college students with autism, but there is anecdotal information, as well as indirect report from various parties involved. So one good resource is a book called Educating Students with Autism Spectrum Disorders. And if you're interested in looking into this book, it can be found on UHCL's library website as an ebook. Another good source of information can be conversations with other universities that have autism programs, for example, Lee College. One good source of information is our experiences with Connecting to College over the past couple of years, as well as our own experience supporting individuals with autism. Before we get too deep into the presentation, I'd like to take a moment to talk about terminology. So the formal term for autism is autism spectrum disorder, but we often say autism or ASD for short. These all refer to the same diagnosis, and so we'll likely use them interchangeably during the presentation. You might also hear people say that they have Asperger's or identify as an Aspie. These identities also fall within the autism spectrum. Another helpful tip is that it's best to use person-first language when talking about people with autism. And so this means putting the person first and the disability second, such as saying person with autism instead of saying autistic person. However, some individuals might identify themselves as an autistic person, and that's okay as well. So it would be safest for you to use person first language until that person indicates that they have a specific preference. And so using the right language can make a big difference about whether a student feels safe to disclose their disability or their needs with you. And so it tells them that you're educated on the current lingo and you may be more likely to be receptive to their initiations. So now let's talk about what autism actually is. As a broad overview, autism or ASD is a neurodevelopmental disorder that primarily affects communication and social interaction. Autism is also associated with restricted and repetitive behaviors and interests. And the Center for Disease Control estimates that 1 in 54 children meet the diagnostic criteria for autism. In the diagnostic manual, ASD is broken into 3 levels of severity. Level 1 is the least severe level of impairment, and this is likely to be the level of our students. So without help from others, we may notice social communication deficits when interacting with our students with autism. So this might include awkward initiations with others, odd responses to others initiating with them, or they may appear disinterested in interacting with others. In addition, students' inflexibility may significantly interfere with their success in a variety of contexts, whether that's social, professional, or academic contexts. So this could include things like difficulty transitioning between activities or difficulty organizing and planning their daily schedule. So how many college students have autism? Each year, roughly 49,000 individuals who are diagnosed with autism complete high school, and approximately 16,000 of those students will pursue higher education. And in 2011, a national survey estimated that between 0.7 and 1.9% of college students have autism. So at UHCL, there were 51 students who self-identified as having autism or a related disorder who are receiving services from disability services. And that was as of October 2020. However, this number likely well underestimates the number of students who have autism who are on our campus. So individuals with autism do fall on a wide spectrum. So there's a common saying that if you've met one person with autism, you've just met one person with autism. So that means that individuals with autism are so different that you likely wouldn't meet another person that seemed exactly the same. So keep that in mind that everything we talk about today may or may not be true for the individuals that you're going to meet. So the things that we're talking about are more common to students with autism than the general population, but they might not apply to everybody. So next, let's talk about some strengths that students with autism might have when compared to the general population. We spoke earlier about students with autism having restricted interests. And these very strong interests might lead to more success in a particular area. So, for example, if a student is really interested in biomedical engineering, they might make larger advances than their peers in this field because they spend all of their time thinking and learning about this field rather than most students who disperse their time across different interests. Additionally, students with autism may have different interpretations of our social world and sensory worlds that offer unique perspectives and contributions across many areas. So, for example, I've brought up some people at the bottom of the slide here. The first person on the left-hand side is Temple Grandin, who is a professor of animal science. She aided in the livestock industry in understanding animal behavior and was named one of Time's 100 most influential people in the world. The person in the middle is Satoshi Tajiri, who is the creator of Pokemon. And then the person on the right-hand side there is Dan Aykroyd, and he's most notably known for his roles in Ghostbusters franchise, the Blues Brothers, and I believe he also had a stint on the show Saturday Night Live. And so all three of these people were widely successful in their fields, but all three of these people have also been diagnosed with autism. And then finally, another strength can be sincerity. So students with autism may have difficulty interpreting or using more nuanced communication like sarcasm or teasing or white lies. So while this can sometimes cause difficulty, it often means that students with autism are more sincere. And so you don't have to worry as much about whether they're just lying to be nice or whether they actually meant what they said. So now we'll address what students with autism might have difficulty with. So common challenges include social interaction. So the student may be less socially or emotionally mature. They may be too blunt or too honest, or they may desire social interaction, but they might not seek it out, or they might withdraw from advances. So it could be likely that the student has been rejected previously or doesn't feel like they know how to engage with others. Another challenge is perspective taking. So that's the ability to understand and predict what will happen in certain situations. Some learning skills that the student may find challenging include time management. So that could be, for example, like keeping a schedule of classes or keeping track of appointments or due dates. Attention or focus. So some things that they might find challenging or they might find distracting could be the noise of people walking by or a professor's hand movements during class. Another example is transitioning between tasks could be difficult or challenging for the student. And then another challenge could be understanding abstract information or things like sarcasm, humor, metaphors, or slang. And so the student may be more likely to take information concretely. In addition, the student may experience anxiety or depression, and this could be from social isolation or other reasons, but this can increase the challenges that are associated with autism. And the student may not be aware of their own weaknesses or challenges, so they may not necessarily think that they need help with some of these things. During your interactions with the student, you might notice or the student may make you feel uncomfortable. So for example, they might be too formal or they could also seem too informal. The student might seem rude or impolite. So for example, that might look like they're being too blunt. The student might go on for long monologues or only talk about their favorite topic rather than asking you what you're interested in. It could seem like the student's not attending during your interactions with them. So, for example, they could talk about off topic or unrelated comments, or they could ask you questions about things that you've already answered. It could seem like the student is disinterested during your interactions. So some examples could be poor eye contact. The student could have poor body language or a flat tone of voice. They could attend to other activities while you're interacting with them. So perhaps they're on their cell phone or they're writing or drawing in a notebook. And the student might not always ask questions when they don't understand something. and they might not always want to participate in a group activity. Um, in addition, the student might seem disorganized during your interactions with them. So another example of that could be engaging in off-topic comments, or asking questions about information that you've already covered or talked about. The student might not always complete assignments correctly or on time, or they might have trouble organizing their portion of a research paper or organizing presentations or papers, or keeping track of when things are due, assignments are due. And so finally, the student might not pick up on signs from you that you're uncomfortable. So for example, if you're engaging in some hesitant responses, like providing just one-word responses during your interactions with the student, they might not pick up on those or notice that you're engaging in those. So some challenges that are specifically related or that specifically pertain to Zoom and online classes. Um, Communication with students may be more difficult because classes are being conducted primarily through Zoom. So, for example, class engagement or in-class participation may be more difficult for students, and Zoom makes it easier for students to actually not participate because students now can turn off their camera and their microphone. In addition, students can't talk to their peers or their professors before or after an online class, whether it's to ask questions about class content or just to socialize like they could in person. Classes and meetings being held through Zoom add another step when students need to ask for help. So students need to email to set up, for example, students need to email to set up a Zoom appointment during their professor's office hours, as opposed to just stopping by their office during the scheduled office hours. And communicating via email in itself may raise a few challenges. So because communication via email is not face-to-face, what's being said may be left open to interpretation. So the tone might be difficult to interpret. And students with autism often don't know when or how to ask for help or to ask for clarification about assignments. And so this may be made more difficult now that communication is largely limited to email or to Zoom. So, for example, students may not know the best way to ask for help for a problem that they encounter. For example, whether their question is simple enough to be answered via email, or whether the problem is more complex and it would be best to schedule an office hours meeting. And not all students are proficient in their email writing skills. This is a skill that's commonly targeted at connecting to college. So students may not check their emails frequently. Maybe a student might not know when an email warrants a response or when it doesn't. Or perhaps the student might take a long time to write just a short email. In addition, classes that do not have a set meeting time or classes that have work at your own pace assignments can make keeping on top of assignments difficult. So for example, for classes that do not have set due dates or schedules, it requires that the student set up their own schedule for when they would like to work on and submit their class assignments. However, creating a schedule and sticking to that schedule is an additional skill that that student will have to learn. And in addition, all handouts and assignments and quizzes and exams are accessed through Blackboard or a similar online platform. And this can raise challenges if Blackboard or other online platforms are difficult to navigate. And lastly, some students have difficulty keeping up with note taking during classes. So, because some students are not proficient in their note taking skills, the notes that they take in class may not be helpful when they try to use them to study for exams. Okay, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lorena, and she's going to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Megan. Can you allow me to share my screen? All right, can you see the presentation? Perfect. All right, so now that we've talked about difficulties students with autism might have, let's address things that you can do to help. So first, I'm going to outline some strategies in this slide and go over them in more detail with examples later. So first, providing structured and clear expectations, using task analyses, giving rules, as well as prompts. So one way to help is to provide more structured and clear expectations. So the more direct and concise, the better. Providing more structured and clear expectations is something that your entire class could benefit from, and not just students with autism. So first, consider providing more structure during the lesson. So an example of this could be beginning and ending your lecture with a summary of the contents that you've covered, as well as asking comprehension questions throughout the lesson. So you can also prepare your students before the semester begins, as well as before your class begins. So you may want to talk about things like due dates, assignment expectations, how to schedule office hours, your contact information, prep for group projects that you may have. And you may also want to provide tutorials, so providing clarification about how to navigate Blackboard, how to find things on Blackboard, and ensuring that you are posting assignments and handouts in the same place each time, and making sure that your Blackboard folders and pages are easy to navigate and are clearly labeled. And this is something that you can also show your students during your class. And so, more ways to provide more structured and clear expectations is to consider adding a section to your syllabus detailing what topics will be covered, as well as what assignments are due for each class period. So the sooner the students have this information, the more prepared they'll be for your class. You can also add information about the different support services at UHCL. So these would include connecting to college, tutoring, academic coaching, the writing center or the math center, and how to contact them as well. So in addition, you can also provide weekly in-class reminders about due dates. And if you are doing this, or if you know that you are going to have some changes in your expectations or plans, making sure that they are announced more than one time and in more than one format. So if you are giving this reminder in class, making sure that you are following up in an email or having it in an announcement on Blackboard for students to be able to see. And so remember that providing clear and structured expectations is something that all of your students could benefit from. So taking the time to provide this extra information to all students could benefit your students. So another way to help is incorporating universal design of instruction practices. So for example, designing your study materials similar to the way that they will be presented on exams. So if you are using an essay format for your exams, ensuring that your study materials look the same. The same applies if you are using multiple choice or matching questions. You can also use visual organizers or templates. So these include graphics or flowcharts if applicable. You can also present the information in multiple formats. So this could be in illustrations, tables, models, graphics, or even videos. And in addition to presenting the information in class, consider posting your lecture notes or your PowerPoint slides early to help students who have a difficulty keeping up with note-taking during classes. And you can also consider allowing your students to screenshot PowerPoint slides when relevant, or posting your recorded lectures onto Blackboard so that students can reread or rewatch your lectures as well. Another tip is using the Zoom features to help with class engagement and in-class participation. So Zoom does have a raise your hand or lower your hand feature that you could use during class discussions or to indicate that the student wants to speak. And Zoom also has a cool feature of creating and launching poll questions that you can use to check for comprehension throughout your lecture, and this can make your lecture more engaging for those students as well. And so I want to talk a little bit about group projects. So when you do have group projects in your class, you want to make sure that you are providing clearly defined roles for students. So have group members pick parts of the assignment or project to work on. And again, making sure that we are providing those structured and clear expectations. And we want to outline the expectations. So providing a rubric that details your expectations for the assignment, what they need to complete, and what it is that they will be graded on. Another consideration is keeping the groups small. So keeping groups small will help to pare down the amount of coordination the students have to do via phone or email. And another consideration is pairing with a buddy. So if your class has more than one group assignment or project, consider pairing the student with autism with another classmate to work on all of them together. And you may also want to consider allowing for in-class time to work on the group project, if at all possible. So with Zoom, you can create breakout rooms to facilitate this, and this would allow you as the professor to move from group to group to facilitate communication and also to answer questions about the project that may arise in the moment. Another consideration is rather than allowing students to choose their group members, consider assigning students to groups. So if conflicts arise between groups, you can switch around group members. And if you've gotten to know your students a little more, then this would allow you to avoid conflicts as well. And so, as I mentioned, the previous information could be applied to all students and not just students with autism. So now I'll go over some strategies to use with individual students. So for these strategies, I will use these common challenges. So speaking too often or asking too many questions in class, failing to ask for help with homework assignments or projects or presentations, as well as difficulty navigating Blackboard. So first, I will present the task analysis. And a task analysis is essentially a to-do list or a step-by-step guide for a target skill. So for the example of making a discussion post on Blackboard, you might want to provide it in steps. So the first step would be click on discussions. The second step would be click on the title of this week's article. And you may also want to provide questions if different steps depend on different circumstances. So you could ask, do you have any unread posts? If yes, read all the posts marked unread to ensure you are not writing the same questions as another classmate. If no, click create thread. And so the following step would be in the text box, write your discussion question, and the last step, click submit. So this is what a task analysis would look like. And you could make task analyses to show how to navigate other areas of Blackboard as well. So for example, how to check your grades or how to submit an assignment. And so another challenge a student with autism may have is asking for help with homework assignments. So here I will show you how to use a task analysis to help this student. So the first step, you would say check the syllabus. Was there a note about the assignments? If yes, what did it say? Follow what it says to do. If no, go to step 3. So step 3 would be to check Blackboard. Were there any instructions for the assignment? If yes, what did it say? Follow what it says. If no, go to step 5. And then step 5 would be if you check the syllabus and Blackboard, then you can ask the professor about the assignment. And so another strategy that you can use is developing clear rules that will make it easy for the student to succeed. So for this example, we will use the common challenge of speaking too often or asking too many questions during class. So first, you want to provide the student with a rule. So for example, for this student, the rule would be ask questions during an office hours meeting. Then you want to explain why the rule is important. So for this example, the rationale would be, this is important so that the class doesn't fall behind schedule. And if the rule isn't being followed, you can provide a prompt. So for this example, the prompt would be, you can ask up to 5 questions, and then you need to make an office hours meeting to ask additional questions. So the more structured and clear expectations that we provide, the more likely they are to successfully navigate these situations. And so for the example, asking for help with homework assignments, again, you want to provide that student with a rule. So for example, the rule would be, ask questions about homework assignments if the instructions are unclear. Then you want to explain to them why this is important. So for example, the rationale here would be, this is important so that you know how to correctly complete your homework and future assignments. And again, if you notice that the student isn't following the rule, you can provide them with a prompt. So the prompt would be, remember, if the instructions are unclear or some information is missing, you can email me your questions or make an office hours appointment. And so again, another common challenge that is experienced by students with autism is navigating Blackboard. So for this challenge, a rule may not be the best strategy to use when you're helping your student to learn to navigate Blackboard. And that is unless the student was not using Blackboard altogether or forgetting a step when navigating Blackboard. So I will show you in the following slides how to use prompts to help this student. And so prompts include anything you introduce that isn't already present to help the student use their target skill. So for example, this could include a visual prompt. So it could include a schedule, task analyses, written rules or rubrics. It can also include a verbal prompt. So vocally reminding that student to complete a task. So for example, remember to send me the topic for your paper by 7 p.m. tonight. And lastly, you can use a model prompt. So this would be showing them how to complete a task. So for example, you can provide a student with a completed assignment as a guide, so maybe from a previous student, and you can provide these via Zoom or Blackboard, as well as providing your students tutorials on how to navigate your Blackboard. And so for prompts, I'm going to use the example of speaking too often or asking too many questions during class. So for this, you can provide a verbal prompt. And so that verbal prompt would be, you can ask up to 5 questions and then you need to make an office hours meeting. Or we can speak more about this topic during break or after class. And so for the example of asking for help with homework assignments, you can provide a visual prompt. So this could be a task analysis or flow chart with steps for how to ask for help. And lastly, navigating Blackboard. For this challenge, you can provide a model prompt. So you can provide the student with a tutorial on how to look for assignments, how to look up their grades, or how to submit assignments as well. And so some general tips. So when interacting or working with a student with autism, keep an eye out for situations where a certain expectation is unspoken, but most people would know. So, for example, if a student is working on a group project, or if students are working on a group project, they might assume that their teammates will respond to an email chain within a certain amount of time, and they might not say this out loud. However, this is an expectation that a student with autism might not pick up on, and it might be advantageous for everyone in the classroom to address this explicitly. So the second tip is to leave a little more time for a student to respond. And so students with autism may answer a little slower than most, and giving them a little more time can help. So don't jump in and try to finish their response. Just give a little more time to hear what they have to say. And so the third tip is to be aware of distractions. So students with autism may have difficulty weeding out distractions. And online, this could look like people walking around the background or having a cat somewhere in your vicinity. And so consider trying to minimize these distractions if the student is having trouble staying on topic or participating. And the final step is that we want to watch for and acknowledge improvement. So getting better at things is hard, and it is an accomplishment when we get better at things. And so your student may not become a pro, but little improvements over time can add up. And so we want to start the conversation early and follow up regularly, meaning that if there is a problem that a student needs to address, don't wait or let a large period of time go by before you address it. And so finally, we'll talk about what to do if a student is disruptive or makes you feel uncomfortable. So what's tricky about autism is that the difficulties are often social, and we typically don't talk about social norms and expectations explicitly, either to help someone follow them or after someone has violated an expectation. So for example, if you're talking to a student and they keep interrupting you and changing the subject, you might assume that they don't care to talk about your preferred topics or interests, and you might think that they're rude or inconsiderate. And so rarely in these situations would we directly address this with that person. So you may just look for a way to leave the conversation and avoid talking to that person in the future. So one thing to remember is that most of us weren't directly taught that you should talk to your conversation partner about the topics that they're interested in. This is usually something we learn without being told. So this is what makes autism a little trickier than a learning or physical disability, and why being direct can definitely benefit the student. So my number one tip is do not be afraid to be direct. It's not only okay, but it can be incredibly helpful to directly address the issue with the other person. But most importantly, we want to be respectfully direct. So don't be rude or inconsiderate, but do directly address the problem in a respectful way. And you can do this by following these steps. So the first step would be to state the behavior that the student is exhibiting, and then tell them the consequences for engaging in that behavior. And then lastly, provide a suggestion or an alternative response of what they can do next time. So an example would be a student who is continuously interrupting you during a conversation. And you could say, hey, I've been noticing that during our conversations, you've been repeatedly interrupting me when I'm trying to tell you something about an assignment. This could come across like you don't care what I have to say or that you are being rude. Instead, try waiting 2 to 3 seconds after I finish talking before you begin your statement or question. And so this strategy can also be applied when the student is making a classmate uncomfortable. So for example, if they are engaging in off-topic conversations with another classmate during a group project, you can say, hey, I've noticed that while you've been working with your group, you mentioned topics that are unrelated to your group project. This could be problematic because it could distract your group members from working on that project. Instead, why don't you talk about these after class or during your break time? And so if a student is acting odd or making you feel uncomfortable, tell them. Don't assume that you know the student's intentions. Be direct in a respectful way. Make sure you tell them what it is that they're doing, how it makes you feel, and let them respond as well. And so now we're going to briefly discuss what being an autism ally means. So an ally is a person with a privilege on a particular axis who makes a conscious choice to work against oppression on that axis. So in this instance, it's a person who does not have autism working with and for autistic rights. So an autism ally provides support to people with students with, or people or students with autism. They recognize that they are not an expert in autism and refer individuals seeking guidance on autism to Connecting to College, Disability Services, or another university resource. They continue to actively seek information about autism and educate themselves about how autism affects students, as well as how to work to educate others about autism and how they can support students with autism. They speak up when someone makes a derogatory or mean-spirited comment about autism or a student who may have autism. And they also agree to be a safe space. So this includes being a safe space to students with autism, where the student can fully express themselves without fear of being made uncomfortable, unwelcome, or unsafe. And you can also take steps to identify yourself as a safe space for a student to disclose a diagnosis or just to start a conversation about difficulties they're having in class. So you can do this by spending extra time discussing the disability section of the syllabus and displaying your Autism Ally sticker in your office or virtually on Blackboard. And you might also mention that you've completed this training, and if you have helped students in the past, this could also be helpful to talk about. And so now we'll briefly discuss the Connecting to College program. So as mentioned earlier, Connecting to College is a program that works closely with Student Success Center, the Disability Center, Career Services, and Counseling Services. And so in addition, UHCL's Connecting to College is now partnering with Lee College so that students transferring here will be even more prepared. And so there are two primary branches of Connecting to College that link to our goals of supporting students with autism, along with the students, staff, and faculty invested in their success. So the first branch involves directly supporting students in three ways. So first, Connecting to College connects students with resources already available on campus, as I've mentioned, so disability services and counseling services. And we do require that students attend academic coaching or supplemental instruction and career counseling regularly to stay on track for their degree and post-degree goals as well. Additionally, the student signs a consent allowing for their support service team to communicate with each other, and this allows for a team-based approach to supporting the student. And we also provide additional supports that are not already available to students. So students meet with each other every other week for community and support. We do have a program called Community Connections. We also are available to assist with success in the classroom, and we do this by being available for consult and class observation and promoting open communication with the students' professors. So for all of our students that are in Connecting to College, we do ask for consent to be in contact with professors. And if we do get that consent, then we do touch base with the professors at the beginning of the semester to introduce ourselves, and then throughout the semester as a check-in, and We do provide assistance if they see that the student is struggling in class. So this could be either academically or with interpersonal skills. And then some students may benefit from more support than what we've already spoken about. And so based on their need and availability, we also meet with some students once or twice a week to practice specific skills that can help them meet their academic, professional, or personal goals. And so our second focus is on the larger community. So first, we provide open trainings like the one you're at now for students, staff, and faculty. And these trainings are designed to build awareness about students with autism at the university and to promote a more inclusive environment where students are more likely to succeed. We also conduct individualized trainings for various departments on campus. So we've completed trainings with various departments such as the resident hall staff and the Student Success Center. And lastly, we are available for consults with faculty and staff who may be working with a student with autism or with similar needs who may not be a part of the Connecting to College program. A note to make is that we cannot discuss identifiable information about the student, but we can provide some strategies based on the general description that the professors or staff provide us with. And so these are some resources. The top is a study that was conducted by Christy Steele, and she actually helped to create Connecting to College. And if you would like more information that is specific to Lee College, you can contact Kaylee Villanueva, and she is the director of the Connecting to College program on their campus. And if you would like more information, you can also access the Center for Autism Developmental Disabilities Facebook page, so the CAD Facebook page. And we do have those links if anyone needs them. And so now we will open the floor for discussion.
There's a great question in the chat that Stuart posted.
I'm here. Yeah, and so I've had several students who have self-identified and are in this group, and invariably, there's a student who takes, well, I don't want to say too much time, but who can take up, many more hours of the day, and who wants help every single day. And so sometimes I'll go to the dean of students. I'll often go to the dean of students or the student success center, and I'm having trouble finding out what help that these people can get because they're turned away from these other offices. And so my question really is, so the dean of students told me that we are an access model, and then some students just aren't meant or able to succeed, and that's not our problem. And as a faculty member, I want every single one of my students to succeed. And so my question to you is, what is the difference between an access model that is UHCL and a success model that would be, something that is from high school and the students come here and expect some of those same services?
Yeah, thank you for your question. That's a great question. As far as the terms success model and access model and the difference between those, I'm not incredibly familiar. Perhaps Dr. Lerman can speak more on that. But in terms, do you want to answer that question, Dr. Lerman?
Well, this is a great question, and
Yeah.
it's a little bit something that we struggle with. We want our students to succeed, but we also know that it doesn't help them if we're doing too much for them, right? And so what we really try to do in Connecting to College is to give them the tools that will make them more independent. And so I would say if you are finding that you have a student, so the students that we're working with, their problem generally is they're not asking for help when they need it. And so when you're talking about a student that's asking for too much help, then what I would find out is what resources are they accessing other than you, because they need more than what you can provide. Because we're not expecting you to work individually with a student, to help them be more independent and all of that. That's something that we could do, or the Student Success Center could do. So that would be the first thing, is if it seems like what they're needing is even more or special attention, then I would refer them to the Success Center and to Connecting to College, and then leave it to the Success Center and Connecting to College to make that decision about how much support they should get. Does that help?
Yeah, that does help. And then maybe just for the other folks who are here today, and and we have had some success that way, and I have had meetings, with the student, and in some cases a parent, with the FERPA stuff filled out properly, of course, and a representative from your group as well. So, and those have been helpful when multiple people are together, so that the student isn't coming to me and said, well, Connecting to College said this, and the Student Success Center said that, and they promised me this. So it does nice to have everyone in the same group. So it's like, no, that's not exactly, that's not how it was worded.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that can be very helpful if the student, it permits that kind of collaboration. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, I'd also like to just go off of what Stuart was saying. I think that, having sort of as much, and I know that there's privacy things here, and I know that you've said that it's been hard to get students to go to accessibility or, self-identify, and there's certainly some sensitivities there. But it seems like we're able to be more successful when we're sort of able to do man-on defense, helping student by student and really working together, rather than doing sort of this broad zone kind of approach. So this training is awesome, but it really only applies to, like you said, a small number of college students, between 1% and 2%, and that we only have 51 UHCL students. And again, this is self-identifying. So it seems like there's a very, very small minority that might need more help and support. And I wish I knew who I had to help me help those students, what resources I can triangulate with. So I can say, oh yeah, your Connecting to College counselor says this, your student success academic coach, let's all work together to help you to succeed. Instead, it just feels a little broad. And I'm grateful for the training, and especially what you were saying about how much of this can apply to all of our students and be very useful for all of our students. But I wish I knew who my team was and how to help them connect with their team better.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do that.
That is such a great point. And in fact, that is one of the biggest roles for Connecting to College. So if a student, it registers for Connecting to College, then that's what we do, is we help coordinate their team. And if they give us permission to interact with a professor, then we do that. Now, if a student is not working through us and they're getting academic coaching and that kind of thing, you're right. Those, I don't think, and counseling, I don't think that those resources interact with each other like we kind of interact with everyone and pull everyone together. We also have a handout that we give our students that lists all the resources and how to actually sign up for them. And so we're going to be posting a link to this presentation, and maybe we'll also post that as well, because that could be something you give to all your students, and they can read it and see that Connecting to College is for people with autism or related needs. And so you don't have to worry about figuring out which student it would fit with. You could just give it to all your students and make it available. And so that would give them an idea of what resources were out there too.
Yes. But that still kind of falls into this problem of sort of like zone training, like this really broad training. And for a lot of students, I think it's going to be kind of white noise. Like I've had students who they were involved in connecting to college, and I didn't find out until the very end of the semester, and so again, like I know there's some hard things with confidentiality, but like I don't see how I can provide them with the additional support beyond just trying to do what I do to help all of my students.
I totally agree. And lately we have been really emphasizing that with our students and impressing on them to give us that permission. Because if they give us permission, what we will do is we will reach out to all of their instructors at the very beginning of the semester to introduce ourselves. And then we periodically check in and we make sure that they know that they can contact us if they have any issues. So it's just getting that student to give us that permission from the very beginning. Sometimes they wait and they don't give us permission until they really realize things are going south.
Yeah. I have a second question, but I'll wait until other people have their questions. Okay, then I'm going to go for it. This is kind of similar about that idea of having a team that can really help. So like vis-a-vis group work, I have had in different classes, one group that was amazingly supportive. Like they were like a dream team of support for all of the people in the group, and especially the student who had autism. And they were providing a lot of the things that you were saying, that we as instructors can do, giving them explicit explanations of implicit expectations, really supportive, a really excellent group that was just so patient and loving. Conversely, I've had other students who said, look, I don't like group work to begin with. Here's this person who makes group work even harder. I don't know why they're making group work even harder. I don't like working with them. I don't like group work. And in fact, I know it was kind of tongue in cheek in the presentation, but like, that graph about what did I learn from group work? And then most of the graph is trust no one, right? And that's students' attitude towards group work, despite it being, really useful for them pedagogically and, in terms of life skills. And again, without being able to bring these groups in and have them understand why this student is so difficult. They just say, oh, look, here's this guy in my group who's arrogant, who doesn't respond to emails, who doesn't get work done, and I have to do all of the work for them. Why do I have to do group work? And so how can I get these groups on board? I don't know, you know what I mean? Like it's a lot of extra work for them. And I wish that they could all be as patient and kind and hardworking as the group that I described in the first class. Like, how do I make them allies, I guess, is kind of the question.
Well,
That's
I
a
guess I'll
great
jump
question.
in.
Yeah.
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, one thing you could do we do have autism allies trainings for students. Periodically, we haven't done that as much because
in addition to all of your schoolwork and this difficult group work situation, I want you to go to another class. I mean, that seems like a big ask for somebody who's, just in a class to say,
that was just one sort of side thought that I had. Is one thing you could do is just let everyone be aware of that. But no, I mean, you raise a good point. And I mean, I think I would probably, if I saw big problems, I would probably maybe try to move them to a different group. But I think I would talk more directly to the student with autism, whether he has autism or not. I mean, if you see that he's not, I think our suggestions about being explicit and respectfully direct and stating the behavior, stating the consequence, and stating alternative, that works for everyone. That works for all of us. So whether you think the student has autism or not, I would just do it with them as well. Any student who is creating a problem for a group, and then perhaps have special points for getting along with each other, for working well in the groups. And I liked Lorena's suggestion to try to do some of the group work in class if possible. so that
Yeah.
you can sort of be there to observe and provide feedback.
That's what I've done, you know, and having it in class. So it's like, you know, they're in class anyway, you know, and that I can be there and say, you know, are you involving all the members of the group? Is everybody getting a chance to, you know, give feedback and participate? And, you know, if they're not comfortable talking, for example, in a class presentation, would they be comfortable doing the PowerPoint or something like that? So, you know, certainly finding ways to try to like intervene in it. But, you know, it does put a big burden on the students in that group. And I don't know how to, and the ones who do it well, you know, they're awesome. And the ones that did it well in my other class, I did tell them, like, you guys are an incredible group. I really appreciate this. You've gone above and beyond, you know, this is really good life skills that you're doing.
And that might be a great thing is if you could sort of create a list of tips based on what you've seen work well with groups. And then when you do have group work, starting out by saying, here is a list of things that when groups do this, the groups go well. And have that be sort of a tutorial for the whole class, and then making sure that they're getting feedback about that. Are they following those tips? You know, because we know that even students without autism can have the same issues.
Yeah. I wish there's some way to, I don't, like I said, like I know that a lot of this comes down to confidentiality, but I just wish there was a way to help people say, you know, I understand where they're coming from, why they're acting this way, and that I can be kind and charitable about it, instead of feeling like they're going to make me get a bad grade on this group project and I hate group work.
Yeah.
I guess when you're asking for permission from these students, tell them my experience. Tell them that their teachers would really, 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 really like to know if they're involved in this program, because it would make things so much easier. Yes,
we will definitely pass that on and emphasize the importance of it, and making sure that they understand what that means. You know, that it won't mean that everybody in the world's going to know, and I think just being a little bit more explicit in terms of what we would do. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And at any time you ever have a question or an issue with a student, you are always welcome to contact connectingtocollege@uhcl.edu. But I think we were out of time. This is recorded and it'll be posted. But I forgot, would you prefer me to cut off the question and answer portion?
No, that's fine.
Stuart, would you?
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, I think people need to know that answer.
I think so too, but I had just forgotten to let people know that we were recording. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.